MVP, Most Valuable Player. These three words are one of the most important things a player in any sport can win. Well, besides the championship. Yet, in the NBA, it's that one award that has continued to change its criteria time and time again. Some years, the MVP is the best player in the league, while other years, it's the best player on the best team. This year's MVP race is a perfect example of both sides of that argument. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Nikola Jokic are both having all-time seasons, and both are easily deserving of MVP. But these players do fall into two different categories of most valuable. So why does this happen? Why is the NBA MVP such a variable award compared to other sports? Well, let's talk about it. Yo, what's up everybody? It's your boy 2KJ here, and today we're going to dive a little deeper into the NBA's Most Valuable Player Award, talk about the many circumstances that come with it. If you like the content, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and post what you think about the MVP award down below. In basketball, there are an incredible amount of ways that you can be valuable. Some players come with their defense and playmaking, like Draymond Green, while others come in their passing and court vision, like in John Stockton or Steve Nash. But in the case of winning the MVP, you usually have to fit into one or two categories. Either you're the best player in the world without argument, or you're the best player on the standout best team. A lot of the times, players fit into both these categories, but every once in a while they'll fit into either one or the other. Well, this isn't a bad way to say you should be MVP or not. Sometimes outside factors can have an impact on this voting, causing the award to sometimes go to a player that you might not think. In order to show this, I'm going to give you guys a quiz. Today, we're going to blindly break down some interesting MVP races, and you're going to tell me who you think is MVP without knowing what players or what year it is. This way, we're going to take out all the agendas, all the favoritism, and just go straight from stats. Let's say we have two players. Player A put up a staggering 33.9 points per game, which led the league in scoring, along with 9.8 assists and 9.2 rebounds. While player B put up 26.4 points per game, 9 assists, and 12.4 rebounds. Just with these stats and zero context, who do you think should win MVP? You could make the argument that player A scored 7.5 points per game more, making him the better player, which would be fair, but without additional context, we're kind of just shooting in the dark here. So let's add some more context. Player A's team won 50 games, which was 5th in their conference, while player's B team tied for the best record in their conference with 57 wins. Now, who do you think is MVP? Let's go one step further than that. Win shares is a metric that helps us see how many more wins a team won because of a certain player. Player A accounted for 12 win shares, which is a 0.22 win shares per 48, while player B accounted for 17 win shares and a 0.299 rating. If you haven't caught on yet, I've actually been breaking down last year's MVP race, with player A being Luka Doncic and player B being Nikola Jokic. A lot of people took Luka's stats and said, yeah, he should win MVP. He averages almost a 34-point triple-double, and while that is true, we have to look at other factors like team record and win shares because it shows that he actually wasn't even second in the league in win shares. He was third. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was second with 14.6. The point I'm trying to make here is that the MVP award is simply more than just points, rebounds, and assists. It's a combination of these factors, addition to team record, win share totals, and other statistics that really show us how valuable a player is. But most of all, agendas are also very important. Because you see, the MVP in other sports, like baseball, are usually completely merit-based, with little attention being brought to any other agendas or things like voter fatigue. But in basketball, that's not the case. Voter fatigue is a real thing, just like I'm going to show in our next example. For our next example, we have three players. Player A put up 26.7 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, and 7 assists. Player B put up 22.9 points per game, 14.1 rebounds, and 2.4 blocks. Player C put up 25 points per game, 4.1 rebounds, and 7.7 assists. Just looking at these stats, it's a pretty close race, and I honestly couldn't really tell you who has the edge here. Next, let's look at win shares. Player A has 15.6 win shares and a 2.44 win shares rating. Player B has a 14.4 win shares and a .235 win shares per 48, while player C has 13.1 win shares and a .208 win shares per 48. Judging by this, I would have to say that player A is a winner, but that's because I'm a stats guy and I put a lot of emphasis in things like win shares above everything. But let's look at the record because, as we know, that's incredibly important. Player A's team won 58 games, player B's team won 52, and player C's team won 62, the best in the league. Judging just off of these numbers, who do you think is MVP? I mean, I can't really say one way or another, but player A and player C both having an incredibly similar amount of wins total, I would probably go with player A, just simply because they have a higher win share than the other two, and the record is pretty close enough that honestly, it's not really that big of a deal. And player A's stats are honestly better than player C's, so I go with player A. But obviously, that's not what happened in real life, because player A is LeBron James, the guy who didn't win MVP this year, but who won the past 2 years before and will win the past 2 years after. So who won this year? Well, that would be Derrick Rose. 2010 was an incredibly iconic time in basketball, and no other player was more iconic at this time than Derrick Rose. The third-year player out of Memphis was the exact star player the Chicago Bulls have been looking for since Jordan's departure in the '98 season. Rose was great in his first 2 seasons, helping lead the Bulls to 41 wins at both and a berth in the playoffs in both. It would be his third year, though, where he truly would become the D Rose we knew, leading the Bulls to 62 wins, the highest since their final championship winning season in 1998. Not only that, but he would become only the second Bulls player ever to win the Most Valuable Player award and the youngest ever, coming in first and ahead of Dwight Howard and LeBron James. Why did I bring up this MVP though? Because after looking at some of these blind stats, it's kind of wild how LeBron didn't win the award. He averaged more points and rebounds, had a better shooting percentage from the field and the three, while also leading the league in both win shares and win shares per 48. Well, I kind of spoiled it before, but voter fatigue is the real reason why LeBron didn't win the award this year. You see, in the NBA, winning back-to-back MVPs is a very rare feat, but it's happened numerous times throughout the NBA's history. Winning 3 in a row is an entirely different situation. There have been only 3 players in history who have won 3 in a row, and that would be Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, and Larry Bird. A major reason why is because of voter fatigue. Winning 2 straight is a great feat, but when a player is in contention for their third, the media expects them to have an even better season than their first 2. You can't meet that criteria, you don't win. Is this fair? Probably not, but the NBA is a media-driven league, so sometimes the things that happen don't really make any sense. LeBron would go on to win the next 2 MVPs, and obviously, like I said, he won the 2 before, but it's interesting to look at if he had won that MVP in 2011, there's a chance he wins 5 straight MVPs, which probably puts LeBron in an entirely different category when we talk about these GOAT debates. But anyway, let's start on our next example. Here we have 3 players. Player A averaged 18.8 points per game, 9.2 rebounds, and 3.4 assists, posting 12.9 win shares and has a win shares per 48 of .265. Player B averaged 28.3 points per game, 6.3 rebounds, and 5.4 assists, posting 13.8 win shares and a .208 win shares per 48. Lastly, player C, who averaged 21.1 points per game, 4 rebounds, and led the league with 11.6 assists and 17.8 win shares to go along with a .284 of win shares per 48. Just by these stats, who do you think has the edge? Player B scored more points per game than the other 2, but fell far behind in win shares. So let's look at records. Player A's team winning a staggering 66 games, which was the best in the league by 7, while player B's team won 57 and C's team won 56. Now looking at all of these factors, who do you think is MVP? I mean, looking at these stats blind, I personally would go with player C, because not only do they lead the league in assists, win shares, and win shares per 48, they only were 1 game behind player B record-wise, who scored 7 more points per game. But I do think both of them are a little ahead of player A, even though player A was on a far better team. Now, between player B and player C, honestly, it's probably a toss-up on who got it this year. But this MVP race is really interesting, because in real life, the player who would win MVP would be Kobe Bryant, player B, with Chris Paul being in second and Kevin Garnett in third. The reason why this MVP race is so interesting is because it directly shows what voters really care about in a race that basically comes down to one factor. A lot of people always talk about Steve Nash winning Kobe's MVP in 2006 when he averaged 35.4 points per game on a 45-win Lakers team. But Nash deserved that MVP. If anything, Dirk probably could have won it, saying his Mavs team won 60 games that year. But this race between Chris Paul and Kobe Bryant literally came down to a single game, as the race was so tight that both stat-wise and narrative-wise, it was honestly just a toss-up. And that toss-up came to their last meeting in the regular season, where Chris Paul was outplayed by Kobe Bryant in a game that everybody saw, and they went, well, Kobe Bryant's the MVP. I mean, they both basically have the same record. Both of their stats are honestly pretty comparable, and Kobe just outplayed him in their last meeting of the season, and that puts their record ahead of theirs. So Kobe's the MVP. And honestly, that's sometimes how the MVP works. When Joel Embiid won his MVP, it honestly came down to their last meeting between him and Jokic in the regular season, because a big narrative during that time was that Jokic was being outplayed by Embiid, and he got outplayed by Embiid that game, and that directly led to him winning the MVP that year. Sometimes it honestly just boils down to that. But sometimes, in the case of this year's MVP race between Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Nikola Jokic, it comes down to a lot of other factors that a lot of people probably wouldn't realize. Yes, Jokic is probably having the best season of his career, which is probably one of the greatest seasons of all time in terms of just basketball in general. Yes, he did average a 28-point triple-double with unbelievable efficiency. But that's not what this comes down to. This comes down to voter fatigue, and it comes to the fact that even though Jokic has done this the past 3 or 4 years, Shai took a team that won 20 games and has brought them to winning 68 games. That's what this is about. That's why Shai Gilgeous-Alexander won the MVP this year. Not necessarily because he had a quote-unquote better season than Jokic, but because narrative-wise, it just makes a lot more sense. The Thunder are far and away the best team in the league. They're probably going to win the finals this year, and Shai took them from basically the basement to the best team in the league. That exact reason is why someone like Jason Tatum can never win MVP, because Jason Tatum came into the league on a Celtics team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals into Game 7 against LeBron. They were one game and probably a Kyrie injury and a Gordon Hayward injury away from probably just making the finals and potentially even winning in Tatum's rookie year. Because of that, Tatum can't really win MVP because even though his stats are fantastic, he's always been on a great team. So he doesn't have the benefit of that narrative that someone like SGA does, who went from a team that wasn't as good to a team that is fantastic. While Jokic, who's been doing this otherworldly stuff for the past couple of seasons, he's just gotten voter fatigued out. He probably should have won 4, maybe even 5 MVPs straight, but that's not how the league works. And that's never been how the league works. Just like how LeBron could have won 5 straight, just like the arguments you can make with Jordan winning all those MVPs, even though he easily was the most valuable player in the league. I mean, they won 6 titles. He left the Bulls, they didn't win. He came back, they won 3 more. I mean, I'm not a rocket scientist, but if that doesn't show you how valuable a guy is, I don't know what does. But at the end of the day, that's not what the MVP award is about. The MVP award is about narratives. It is solely dependent on what happened the year prior, because that's how the voters work. It doesn't matter if you had another historical season, if you've had historical seasons the past 2 years before. The voters just don't want to vote for you because they have some other reason to. That's what they're going to do. And that's just how the NBA works. It's a media-driven league, and sometimes the things that happen don't really make any sense. But what do you guys think about the MVP award? I personally think that Jokic should have won this year, even though I completely understand why SGA did. Not to say he's undeserving, but I would have voted for Jokic, even though it still makes a lot of sense why SGA won. But put what you guys think in the comment section down below. If you like the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace!